this. Both of you are
Yeah,
very
thank
kind
you,
to be
Brad.
here.
Thanks for the
really
opportunity,
you very
David
much.
and Penny.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
God bless y'all.
Dr. Rich and William Lambert here on The Awake Nation. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, some news headlines for you, and then Dr. Rita Louise, who we used to have on the program, and now she's going to become another regular contributor again. It's been a while since we talked to her. We're delighted that she's back, and we're going to ask her a question about this idea of you no longer have informed consent anymore. They can do whatever they want to you, or at least that's what we're being told. We'll get her thoughts on that and much more as the Awake Nation continues in a moment.
You got me dancing.
Oh, that's all right. I like dancing is a good thing. We love dancing around here. We try to dance in the studio. You guys don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We're texting each other, dancing around, checking on dogs, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. I gotta tell you, but we're we're getting there. Anyway, just ahead of our next guest, which will be Dr. Rita Louise in just a moment. She's patiently waiting in the green room to be brought up. And you guys loved her when I used to have her on before. I don't know why we kind of we got disconnected or something, but she's back and we're excited. But just ahead of that, I've got some news stories that I want to bring to your attention, some quick headlines. And here, I think we go. All right. Especially this story here. This is going to blow your mind. Are you ready for this? And I teased this in the first hour. Moderna has unveiled a range of new mRNA vaccines designed to target diseases caused by the mRNA-based COVID vaccines. These 3 vaccines targeting Epstein-Barr virus, varicella zoster virus, that's chickenpox and shingles, and the norovirus are advancing to pivotal late-stage development, the company boasted in a statement. Moderna also boasted that Biden's Food and Drug Administration is expected to approve its respiratory syncytial virus vaccine, mRNA 1345, for adults. Now, isn't that absolutely wonderful that the shots they gave you to protect you from COVID now have to have another shot to fight? Shame on you.
That's crazy.
Shame on you.
That's the way. That's the way they do it. That's the way they swing, and that's the way they make money. It's all about money, not about saving lives.
Let's bring in our next guest, Dr. Rita Louise, who we love, and we're glad she's back. Dr. Louise, help. Okay.
It is so nice to be back.
I'm
Oh,
back.
you look
She's back.
fantastic.
Well, you know,
Always
you
in
get COVID and you lose 30 pounds.
Yeah, that's the worst diet
Oh,
in the
you
universe.
oh man. Well, what do you think of that idea? The fact that Moderna has to come out with another vax for their vax.
Well, you know what's scary, and I don't know if I'm speaking incorrectly, but if I'm right, you know, Robert Malone has said that the technology of the mRNA vaccine, just the base technology, doesn't work. You know, and that's the part he worked on. And so, you know, they're putting the little spike proteins on the carrier, but if the carrier is the issue, then what are they doing? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And here's another thing that doesn't make any sense to me. We have a story here, and I'd like Penny, if you could put that up on the screen so I can read it, and tell us what I sent this to you yesterday. Now this is going to blow your mind, folks. Penny.
So it's an era of informed consent is over in a significant blow to patient autonomy. Informed consent has been quietly revoked just 77 years after it was codified in the Nuremberg Code on the 21st of December 2023. As we were frantically preparing for the festive season, the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, issued a final ruling to amend a provision of the 21st Century Cures Act. This allowed an exception from the requirement to obtain informed consent when a clinical investigation poses no more than a minimal risk to the human subject. And my question is, who decides whether it's minimal or not? This ruling went into effect on January 22nd, 2024, which means it's already standard practice across America. So what is the 21st Century Cures Act? It is a controversial law enacted by the 114th United States Congress in January 2016 with strong support from the pharmaceutical industry. The act was designed to accelerate the discovery, development, and delivery of 21st century cures and for other purposes. Some of the provisions within this act make for uncomfortable reading. For example, the act supported high risk, high reward research, novel clinical trial designs, encouraging vaccine innovation. This act granted the National Institutes of Health legal protection to pursue high-risk novel vaccine research. A strong case could be made that these provisions capture all the necessary architecture required for much of the evil that has transpired over the past 4 years. Overturning patient-informed consent was another stated goal of the original act. Buried under Section 3024 was a provision to develop an informed consent waiver or alteration for clinical investigation. Scholars of medical history understand that the concept of informed consent, something we all take for granted today, is a relatively new phenomena codified in its modern understanding as one of the critical principles of the Nuremberg Code in 1947. If you don't know what that is, audience, please Google it and research it. It is inconceivable that just 77 years after Nuremberg, the door has once again opened for state-sanctioned medical experimentation on potentially uninformed and unwilling citizens. According to this amendment, the state alone, acting through the NIH and the FDA and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, will decide what is considered a minimal risk. And most concerning, will determine appropriate safeguards to protect the rights, safety, and welfare of human subjects. Notice the term subjects, not patients, persons, individuals, or citizens, but subjects in an asymmetrical power relationship.
Substitute guinea pig.
Yes. It is understood that the passive subject will comply with the rulings and mandates of their medical masters. The use of the term subjects, like a subject in a kingdom, right, also serves to dehumanize. The dehumanization of populations was a critical component of a Nazi human experimentation, and as Hannah Arendt argued, it is an essential step toward denying citizens the right to have rights. And finally, this ruling also allows researchers and their misguided evangelical billionaire backers to potentially pursue dangerous experimental programs such as Bill Gates' mosquito vaccines, mRNA vaccines in livestock, and vaccines in aerosols. This act encourages these novel high-risk programs with medical studies approved as minimal risk by the regulators, no longer requiring researchers and pharmaceutical companies to obtain patient consent. Yet the histories of pharmacology and medicine are plagued with clinical investigations and interventions that were thought to pose no more than minimal risks to humans, but went on to cause immeasurable pain, suffering, and death. This amendment represents merely a first tentative step as the U.S. government tests the waters to see what it can get away with. Given the lack of attention this ruling received in both the corporate press and independent media, the government is likely to feel emboldened to widen its scope. Thus, this decision represents the beginning of a chilling revisionism in Western medical history, as patient autonomy is again forsaken. This ruling to be actioned by potentially corrupt scientists, health bureaucrats, and captured health and drug regulators is another step toward dystopian future unimaginable just 5 years ago. No doubt the infrastructure to implement this decree is already being constructed by the same groupthink cultists responsible for the nightmarish pandemic lockdowns, continuing to place the pursuit of profit and the greater good above the individual choice, bodily autonomy, and informed consent. And my dogs don't like it either, David.
All right. Well, we get the gist of it. But Dr. Reed, what do you think of this idea that the government can just have people try something without them agreeing to it?
Well, it seems, I mean, I just sit there and I think about the whole COVID vaccine thing. And, in the military, they were pushing it on people, or workplaces were pushing it on people.
Right.
And so you had informed consent, but the consequence of you making your choice of saying, well, I'm not consenting, resulted in you being terminated. So
Right.
Is there really consent happening?
Yeah, there was. You're right. That very, very cognizant point. The fact that many in the military, you really didn't have a choice. You either got dishonorably discharged, or I guess in some cases you could have been court-martialed or something, or if you were planning a military career. I know that there were at the time this was going on, there were a lot of people who were thinking about getting into the military. And when they found out that they had to take this shot, and they didn't want to do that, even if they had gone to West Point or some military academy so that they could enter as an officer, they were discharged. They were just kicked out. And now there is a shortage of good people in our United States military. They're having a recruiting problem because of this same thing. So you're absolutely right, and a lot of people are pressured in the workplace as well. Unless you owned your own business or were an independent, you really had to make a decision back then if you're going to put food on the table.
My friend Billy quit he was a sound engineer for a Fox News program. Was making 3-figure salary. He quit because he did not want to take the vaccine. He did not want the implications, the future implications, which could, scar his life. And then there's also the shedding incidents as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was going to say something, but it just totally left my brain.
Oh, that's okay. That happens to.
I take notes, Dr. Rita.
For those of let's talk a little bit about your career, because for those in our audience who haven't seen you before, or it's been such a long time since we had you on, and I'm so glad you're back. Really, I'm glad that we're going to have you as a regular. Tell us a little bit about what you do, about Dr. Rita Louise, your website, what kind of things you help people with, and that sort of thing.
So I am a naturopathic physician, but the primary work that I do is as a medical intuitive. So I combine intuitive insight, working with people with their health-related concerns. And when I say health-related concerns, it's not just their physical health, although that is a big part of it, but also their mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of what's going on with themselves. And so I work with people all over the world by phone or by Skype, helping them to uncover what's making them sick, or what their issues are, so that they can live a more robust life.
Yeah, and you've done that for quite some time, and it what I like. What do you consider? What do you call the intuitive approach? It's kind of like are you saying there is some sort of an emotional base to some physical illnesses?
Exactly. So I would say, and I'm being very generous here, that 85% of diseases that people experience are, there is always a emotional or mental, a thought related issue tied to it. So when I'm working with someone and they're complaining about, digestive issues, and I start poking around intuitively over the phone into their body, and I'll sit there and go, okay, well, this is what I see going on functionally, but there's this emotion that comes up tied to it. And I explain that to them because my belief is that there's what's going on with us mentally and emotionally on one side, and it will filter down and filter down until it actually shows up in the physical body. So you can give someone supplements or recommend lifestyle changes or whatever that might be, but it doesn't take care of the real cause, which is the psychospiritual aspects of what's going on. And so until they actually heal that part, they're never fully, they might push it into the background, but they're never fully healed.
Right. And we know that, if you're having a problem, for example, in a relationship or a stress-related problem at work or at home, that these things can manifest themselves into physical symptoms, a lot of which begin in the gut, the digestive system. In fact, it was Hippocrates himself, I understand, who said that pretty much all disease begins in the gut, but I think in some cases it begins in the mind. And even if the an emotional crisis was not the cause of the physical ailment, a lot of times the physical ailment will then manifest itself in an emotional response. You become depressed because you are not feeling well. And that complicates and even makes the disease or whatever that's bothering you worse.
Mm-hmm. But what many people don't realize is that that nugget that they get stuck on, where that stress originates, starts in their formative years. And, it follows them along. They feel less than. They are very shy. They feel intimidated. They're surrounded by fear. They're warriors. They have a lot of anxiety, and so those are the precipitators of the health related issue, and what my issues are, what my personal story is going to be different than your personal story. And it's going to be different than your story too, Penny.
Yeah.
So unwinding that and figuring out what it is. And so when I work with people, it's interesting because they'll present something in the present and I'll go, well, hang on one second. And I'll timeline it back and go, well, when you were 8 years old, there was this issue that happened and it left you feeling this way. And they always are like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. This happened. My parents got divorced, or I was bullied at school, or there was something that was going on that shifted their thoughts and created this emotion within them that is validated over and over and over and over and over again as they move through life and move forward, and is controlling what's going on with them in the present. So with that said, I'm going to throw a little pitch here. So in the meantime, since we've talked last, I've written a new book called Dang, It Was Me All Along, which really addresses, I love it too, but it was me. And, but it really addresses taking responsibility for our thoughts and emotions and starting that unwinding process, because we live on autopilot. We just kind of go along and think, well, this is who I am. Somebody says something, now we're really depressed or upset. And we think that that's how it should be or how we should be. But that's not really true. It's because they said something or did something, and it's bouncing off these really old programs that we have inside of ourselves. But those programs can be changed. I mean, it's kind of like a little computer virus. You know, if you sit there and you have a virus, you can run a antivirus program and get rid of it. And so this really talks about what you can do to start paying attention and making those changes inside of yourself to live a happier life and not be affected by everything that's going on around you.
I love the idea of this book, and I'll tell you why. Because you're right. A lot of times you will find that a physical disease or even an emotional problem that is hard to identify the cause of does go back to something that happened to you in an earlier part of your life, whether it was your childhood or something else. However, and I think this is what I'm thinking, this is what you probably are leading to in your book, is the fact that you can only blame that for so long. At some point, you have to own it and say, I got to get over this. In other words, I'm not saying it's easy, especially if you've been through a traumatic experience, like Penny, for example, experienced a tremendous amount of MK Ultra programming and this sort of thing, which she was, throughout her life. So that's really a serious thing. But in some cases, it's something where somebody said something to you. Maybe your parents, due to their own imperfections, didn't raise you exactly the way you wanted to be raised. Maybe they didn't build your self-esteem up enough, or they didn't toughen you up enough so that somebody cannot tear down your self-esteem, whatever it was. You can only say, yeah, this is the root of it. But at some point, you got to own it. You got to say, you know what? Okay, let's get past this, or I got to deal with it. Almost like that slap in the face that Cher gives to that one guy, in the whatever that movie was. Get over it. It's like, come on, you got to move on. Am I right? At some point, you have
Snap
to take
out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but just saying that is very challenging for people, especially if it has been their whole life. The solution I offer is to just start paying attention to it. It's like, you don't like the reaction you have. You don't like feeling a certain way when a situation happens. Well, be with that and go, what can I do different? Because not sometimes, when we make different choices, we have different results. But that programming says, if this happens, this is how I'm going to respond, period. And so when you start paying attention to those issues that you're having, it gives you a choice. It gives you a little pause button to say, okay, so this is normally how I would respond, but I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do it. So what can I do different? And sometimes it can be a white knuckle experience, making that choice and doing that other thing.
Can you? I want people to get out. And where's the book available, by the way?
I just got it on Amazon.
Okay, so I think we're a little locked up.
I bought it on Amazon, and it's on Kindle. That's my favorite mode. I think she froze. I think she froze.
Dr. Reed, can you hear us?
Can you hear us? Dr. Louise? No. Okay, I'll just text her, tell her to sign in, sign out.
Okay, yeah, because
I just bought the book though on Amazon.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
Okay. Oh, she knew. I didn't even text her.
Okay. Hopefully she's
very modest. She is just such an accomplished individual. It says at 8 on her website, at 8, she began searching for spiritual self-discovery, pursuing topics including health and wellness, philosophy, and the esoteric arts and sciences, including a deep interest in ancient traditions, culture, archaeology, and human origins. She's a graduate of the Berkeley Psychic Institute, where she studied energy medicine, meditation, and learned how to perform intuitive clairvoyant readings. Did you know at 8 that you were clairvoyant, Dr. Rita?
Not until I actually went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. So I wanted to become psychic when I was like 12 or 13, because there was The Amazing Kreskin on TV.
Right. He actually hypnotized me, Dr. Rita.
Say that again?
I went to one of his things. He actually hypnotized me.
I got to go on stage. That was like a bucket list experience. It was like, if you saw me in the audience, you would have just laughed because I was like all like crazy, like
pick me.
and I got picked. So
that's weird. So did I. So that's something we have in common right now. He hypnotized me. But I wondered later on, like, what did he actually do? You know, because when you get hypnotized, that's another thing. It's a residue. We were talking about residues, right? So if you don't know what that trigger word is in a hypnotic or NLP session, you won't be able to refute it. So if he says, you know, when you awaken, you will feel rested, and then you will, when I say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, you will take your clothes off and dance like a chicken. And so if you don't know that that's going to happen, like when you're 80, somebody says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and you start take your clothes off and dance like a chicken.
Well, he didn't hypnotize me. He did this other find something in the audience thing, which was okay. But what was really interesting, so he didn't pick me, even though I was like freaking going crazy in the audience. This other guy picked me because there was this whole group of people up on stage. And so he picked me. And of everybody in the whole show, I'm the only one that he asked what they did. And it was like, well, because of you, I do psychic work.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, that's kind of random psychic thing.
Wow.
So. Well, I have to tell you, you're so refreshing in your approach. What I'm thinking here is that, for example, we cannot control. I study Stoicism. I'm a student of that particular philosophy of life, which basically says you can't control. There are certain things that you can control and certain things you can't. You can basically, the things you can control are your reactions to what happens to you. In other words, you can't control those things themselves, but you can control how you respond. For example, if it's raining outside, you can't stop the rain. If you're caught in a rainstorm, you can either do one of three things. You can either dance in the rain, you can sit there and be soaked, or you can get out of the rain, but you can't stop the rain. So it's how we respond to things that happen to us. And I think that's how you have to look at something. And I'm thinking that's what your book probably tells you. Is you take a look at a situation and say, okay, this has happened. Now, what am I going to do about it? I can't mimic how somebody else has treated me. I can't control other people, but I can control how I respond to those other people.
Exactly. And sometimes that response is hard, and I'm going to use the toxic relationship example. You're in a relationship with someone and you stay because you can't make the choice. I'm not even sure how to phrase it. You choose not to make the choice to go.
Yes.
And I've said that to people. It's like, but you're choosing to stay, like in bad jobs. It's like, well, I hate this job, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you have a choice. And they go, no, I don't. I'm like, yeah, you can always leave. And, their face turns white because they can't imagine doing that. It's like, well, you can complain for forever, or you can do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem, and I think I know what you're referring to here, is the comfort zone. In other words, you may not like the situation, but you're more afraid of what's going to happen if you get out of it. That poses a bigger threat in your mind. So you say, well, as bad as this is, I'm going to complain about it. I'm just going to live through it. But
exactly.
You have to take chances. You absolutely have to take chances in this life. This is not a spectator sport. You're going to get out of a situation. And what is the worst that happens? You go from the frying pan into the fire, and then you find another situation. You go someplace else again.
My feeling is that when you actually listen to yourself, like we always ask ourselves, well, what should I do? And I believe that spirit, God, the universe, whatever word you want to put there, will give you an answer. And I'm sure you've asked, if you're in a crappy job, you've asked that question over and over and over again, what should I do? And you've gotten the same answer over and over and over again. You need to leave. You need to leave. And, I suggest to people that you should listen to yourself, because this higher place is giving you the answer. And usually when people make those decisions to take the chance and make the hard choice, in hindsight, they realize that it was the best move they ever made.
Right. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, that's your situation is going to be improved. Now, in addition to your counseling services and everything else, I know that you're also into some pretty interesting things that we cover on this show. Your website covers a number of different issues, everything from cryptids to the paranormal. Tell us about that.
So people have a hard time pigeonholing me.
Right.
I wonder why.
Well, and people are like, well, why are you interested in so much stuff? Or, like, why do you write? I write a lot, although I'm not writing right now. And I just do what feels good to me. Usually there's a question, like, well, what about this? And I love researching and I love deep diving. And so once I've done all this deep diving, it's like, I'll write an article, or I'll write a book, but it's usually satisfying to me. There are people that write books because they just want to make money or, whatever. And I write it because I need to understand something, so even with this new book, my question was, because I was in a really bad place, was what do I need to do to be happy? And is that something that I can bring into my life? And if I can bring that into my life, what do I need to do that? Thus started the journey down this road. And, the techniques that I share in this book are ones that I used, and people laugh at me because, all right, people that know me say, well, it just sounds like we're having a conversation, like we're just talking. But what was interesting was all of the reviews on Amazon say something to the effect, oh, it's like talking to your best friend. Oh, it's like talking to your neighbor. Oh, it's like, because it's just very casual. And I sit there and am very frank about different things that I discuss in the book, like one topic, and I'm not dissing affirmations. I think they're great for some people. They just don't work for me. For me to run around and go, I'm happy and healthy and wealthy and the world loves me, it just makes my brain go
better and better.
You're not.
Yes.
So and I just share that. It's like, but you can, you have to own the affirmation, and maybe having, repeating things like that for some people work. It doesn't work for me. It makes all of my negative thinking just jump to the forefront and go, not so much.
Right.
Well, and you also, from our previous conversations, I know that you are almost like a little bit of a tough love person, and that's what I like about you. You're feisty, as opposed to the type of counselor who goes, so how does that make you feel? It's like, is it you know what I'm talking about? I'm thinking of the movie. Oh God, what was that movie? The Santa Claus, where the guy, the Neil, the kid's mother's new husband, and he's like a psychologist, and he goes, is it in the room with us now? Do you see it? And what you really need, to be perfectly honest, is a guy that is going to do a little bit of a tough love type situation. They're going to be not this mamby-pamby. It's like, get over it. Not that you don't need some sympathy, but you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes
your stuff is so broad based that your mind is very expanded. So it's not, stuck in a finite solution because of how broad based your scope of research and the things that you speak on. So I would imagine that your therapeutic advice, and also the fact most therapists are not psychics, okay?
Well, I think that
That's
really
true.
helps a lot, and
Right.
I feel like my clients kind of can't lie to me too
Right.
much. But one of the things that I like to do is I reflect back what they say in my kind of blunt and frank way. I had have a client who had breast cancer. She had a lumpectomy. And so she's on this medication that takes the estrogen out of her body. I mean, that's just standard protocol.
Right.
And one of the side effects of the medication is that it can affect bone loss. And
Oh,
so
wow.
every time I would talk to her, she'd be like, well, I'm really worried about my bone loss and blah, blah, blah. But she was supposed to take this like calcium, magnesium, vitamin D supplement 3 times a day, which she wasn't doing. And so
Right.
after months and months and months of listening to her freaking out about her bone loss, I said, look, this is what I'm hearing. You can choose to not take the medication and freak out about it all the time, or you can choose to take the medication and just have it be a done deal and
Right.
and not worry about it. So she started taking the medication and we didn't talk about it anymore.
Nice.
Well, yeah, it's like the person who says, "Doctor, every time I take a sip of coffee, I get a stabbing pain in my eye," and the doctor says, "Well, take the spoon out of your cup." You know what I'm saying? You have to remember there are certain things that. But
Yeah, I actually just got your book on Kindle, so I want to let everyone know if you want to get this book, you can purchase it. I like to purchase everything on Kindle because you can highlight stuff, you can search, and you can take the book with you wherever you are, so you don't have to worry, that you can read it anywhere. So I just bought it. I read like the first part of it, and yes, you're extremely honest, forthcoming, funny, charming.
It's just me.
we need more. We need more people like now. Penny, was I right? Like there are certain things like you went through some really. I don't think
Yeah,
Dr.
but
Reed
here's
is.
the thing, David. I didn't even know I went through it until I was 58.
Yeah, that's right. Because it was blocked
So,
out of
but
your mind.
when I found out, I went through a period because I've always been a loving person. So that's just I've always talked to God since I was 3. I also have psychic abilities. They put me through psychic programs called Project Genesis, Subproject Eve. And then when I left my last husband, who sometimes the relationships, they are planned for you. In my instance, it wasn't that I picked these people. They were literally sent to me as handlers, and as you marry your handlers. And it was a small circle that I found out about when I was 58. I started finding out about it. And that circle of individuals, Rita, they all knew one another, and I didn't know that they knew one another. So my first handler, Durrell, I believe he's the illegitimate son of Albert Spears. I had no idea for like 58 years that um, he knew my first husband. And I figured it out. It took me a bit, but I figured it out. Then my first husband told me that my former agent, who I had an affair with in the 90s, is my brother 30 years later after. Yeah, right. And so, how do you get over that? So like the biggest release was I swore for about 5 minutes on the phone, just explicatives, because I was just shocked, but I didn't get more information. But as a person who has been a positive person and a loving person and a giving person, much like yourself, um, you take the blows, you shoulder the blows, you stand up, you wipe your knees off, and you go on, and then you research more, and then you find out more crap. But how do you deal with it is, I think, the nature of your persona that you were born with. That's my personal opinion. You could be born with a very negative constitution, or you could be forged out of the torture that you received as a child, and the bad, because my mother was just really evil, and said some very, very hurtful and evil things, and I was tortured there, deprived of food, isolated, beaten, and many other things that happened to me. So how does one come from that? You can erase part of it, and then part of it gets erased for you, but that's in your root. Like you said, people have these instances. Either they want to know or they don't want to know. In my instance, I wanted to know.
And I think the biggest part is accepting this is where I came from. And actually, I'm going to answer this in a different way. So I have a lot of trauma in my background, family, relation, like multiple narcissistic relationships. It's like, thus the dang, it was me all along. I finally realized like I kept getting in these situations because there was something I needed to fix. And I'm so smart because I have a library of freaking self-help books that didn't fix me, and there's a lot out there that keeps you in that broken place. It's like, oh, I'm codependent. Oh, I have this disorder. Oh, I have this disorder.
Right.
Could we just stop and say, you know what? I'm a person and I'm starting today and I'm moving forward from today. Then all of that all the self-worth issues start going away. All of the crap start going away. And Penny, one thing about you is you've told your story. You've shared your story. Yes. And you've let go of any shame tied to it.
Yes.
And I know that for me, in my last book, not this one, but the one before that, I tell my story. And there was a huge relief that came of sharing, this is who I am and this is where I came from. My sister was like, you can't release that book. And I'm like, sorry, it's going out. But then you can sit there and talk about it and you can accept, well, this was my history and this is who I am. And either love me or not, but
right. I think the shame thing is it's unfortunate because the shame isn't to the child that was beaten and raped. The shame is to the people that did that to the child. Shame does not fall on the child. The things that I found out were substantially afterwards. The shame would not fall upon me. It would fall upon those who knew who were perpetrators.
But if there's this big secret tied to it and it's not something you're supposed to share and it's something that you just hold inside, you never get the chance to let it go. I mean, not that you have to tell everybody, it's like, oh, my mom used to beat me, but it's very cathartic.
It is. I tell people when they come to me that they should write. I say the number one thing that you should do, because I have people that are involved in MK Ultra projects. They come to me and they say, I want to know if I'm MK Ultra. And they are missing memories. So I say, well, this is what worked for me. It may not work for you, but this is what I started doing. Because I'm a writer and I've been writing since I was in, kindergarten, pretty much as soon as I could pick up a pen. And so I had to recreate a timeline to find out where I was missing things. And then I could start reconstructing backwards. So I'm still retrieving memories. And so when people come to me, I say, look, I'm not a therapist. I was married to an individual who was a counselor. He had his MA in psychology. He ran his parents' marriage family crisis counseling office. They were not good people. They were evil people. And they were involved in the entertainment industry. And they also practiced NLP. Now, I'm sure that there are some very good reasons for NLP, but of course, I've had an aversion to it because I was hypnotized by my mother, and I believe I was using SRA, constructs, at some point. So I'm still retrieving those memories. But when people come to me, I say, if you want to know, because I made a prayer when I left my last husband, who's now since deceased, which thank you God, because he was not good. I made a prayer and I said, God, please reveal myself to me. So that is an indication that I want to know. I want to know everything. I don't care how bad it is. I have a right to know. I live this life and I want to know. But some people don't want to know. And, I think that worked for me because I did want to know. And I think it's ultimately is a body mind healing to be able to know, to be able to accept, and then to move forward. And then what do you do from that? Because I believe your mission and my mission and David's mission is the same. We try to help people wherever we can.
Mm-hmm. I remember in elementary school, they would have the person come in to talk about drugs, and how they were bad. But it was always an ex-addict, and they talked because they had that experience. They went down that road and they were relatable, and so people like yourself or myself that have been through a lot, you might not have a degree in a certain thing, but you've been down that road and you've worked on yourself and you've worked on your healing. So I think you actually have more to offer. One of the things that I found interesting in this research was you would think that mental health professionals would have the corner on being happy and how to find happiness in your life. There is no research. They have articles about every aberration of being screwed up.
Right.
But to sit there and talk about these are the things you need to do to be happy or to let go of stuff or whatever starts falling clearly into the more new agey, spiritual, religious aspects versus what people pay a lot of money to get fixed. And they're not necessarily fixing them.
I started studying psychology. Well, I started parapsychology when I was a child. And now I'm like, really? That's kind of weird. And Kirlian photography and auras, because I was seeing things and they had me involved in psychic programs. But my saving grace has always been Jesus Christ. That's who I talk to my entire life. That's the person that saved me from the fire over and over again. That's the person that I always speak to. And many refer to God as a nebulous thing or as a source. So I tell people, because I believe in the power of prayer too. The power of prayer, I believe, is a healing power. And I've seen it reflected in my own life. Not to say that I led a life that was, a goody two shoes, because I was involved in the entertainment industry and I was sex trafficked through that industry, but I didn't even realize I was being sex trafficked, Dr. Rita, until at 58, I started examining everything. And then I started backtracking. So for individuals that we have on the show, we have targeted individuals. We have individuals that are also trying to repair. Like today, Amy Holum's going to be on our last guest, and she has Amy's audios, and it's a digital fingerprinting, so she can help targeted people that are legit being targeted by our governmental forces. And in regards to the medical industry, I have absolutely no faith in doctors. I would prefer a natural. I will talk to naturopaths and psychics because they understand. They have an understanding that what the government is telling you, like the article on non-consent, right? The government is not there to help you. It's literally there, and we're seeing more and more evil being revealed through our government. What are your thoughts on the actual medical profession as an individual that is a psychologist or psychiatrist? Say again?
It is my place of last resort. I mean, sometimes I have to tell people, you need to go get this test done, or you need to go see a doctor because it's to the point that supplementation it's too late. If we worked on it earlier, maybe it would be okay, but at this point in time, not happening. So something I found interesting, and David, I feel like we haven't talked since like before COVID. I mean, I think it's been that long.
That's too long. That's not going to happen again. I'm glad you're back.
No, you're here every other week.
But one thing that was interesting, so my website got devalued by Google. Not that they would tell you that, and you spend all this time doing SEO and fixing it up and having the right title links and blah, 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 blah. And you can't move up the search engine. So I finally found this article that anybody that had an alternative health website like Dr. McCullough, Dr. Mercola, Dr. Axe, I mean, we're talking big name people, their traffic went where I think it was Dr. Mercola lost 100% of his traffic. And so he was like taking all of these articles off in the hopes of bringing it back up.
You did
And
know
so
that
what was
David got kicked off YouTube, right?
Yeah, October.
Let me make this last statement. So what was interesting is that as the alternative health people are doing this, things that had to do with prescriptions were doing this.
Yeah, right. If you were taking a pharmaceutical drug, it's okay.
I mean, so even though it sucks, I do feel a little bit good that like I got put into that pile with them. It's like, well, I must be having an impact.
No, you're right. And I'm surprised because there is really nothing on your website that I think Google would have had a problem with. Because
Right.
I mean, you deal a lot with alternative healing, but you don't really criticize big pharma on your website. You don't really. There's nothing, to the best of my knowledge. Of course, I haven't been there for a while. I just put it up on the screen a little while ago to show people. It's called soulhealer.com, folks. Please go there. Soulhealer.com. It's a great website. But I don't understand why they devalue. I could see if you had a website where you were down, bashing the vaccines, but there was no need for them to do that. I don't understand it.
Well, I mean, I used to have a podcast, Just Energy Radio, and it was covered ancient mysteries and conspiracies and blah, blah, blah. So I think my work was already on their radar.
I see. Well, I got to tell you, folks, soulhealer.com, great website. I do notice, and I think this was the initial reason that we first had you on our program, and it's something we should revisit again. We don't have a ton of time remaining in this hour, but we can touch on a little bit, is the idea of narcissism and narcissistic individuals and how they prey upon people that they have relationships with and make them feel like total inferiority, and they gaslight them and that sort of thing. You have more than one article about that topic on your website.
And a whole book.
Yeah, and a whole book. Tell us a little bit about the role that narcissism plays. Just a brief overview. Next time we'll talk about it in more detail, about narcissistic behavior.
So people that have narcissistic behavior are extremely self-serving. They look at the world through the lens of their own personal experience. And so if they feel their world threatened, if they feel like they're not getting what they want, they're like giant big babies. If they're not getting what they want, they're going to have a temper tantrum. Right. And we were talking earlier about that the formative years. And, it's a behavior that can be learned. It's called the entitlement core belief. And so there are those little kids that you take them somewhere and they're running around and you tell them to stop, but they don't stop. And to get them to stop, you give them a toy or you give them a candy.
Right.
And so that behavior is reinforced. So then they become an adult and they have this expectation that, well, this is what I want to do. And if you have an issue about it, I'm just going to have a temper tantrum, or I'm going to gaslight you, or I'm going to invalidate you so that I can manipulate you and control you to do things that are under my will. I mean, they're toxic, and narcissism is on a scale. We all are a little bit narcissistic. But some people are really narcissistic and extremely toxic.
Well, I am not narcissistic. No. You're right. We all to a certain extent. But when you use that narcissism to the detriment of the person that you really want to love and care about, then it's a almost like a vampiric relationship where you're sucking the life out of them to increase your own worth, and we can't build ourselves up by tearing someone else down.
I remember one of my stepchildren telling me that I could manipulate. He turned out to be my husband. You could manipulate Daddy. And I said, no. I said, why would I do that? Why would you ever want to manipulate somebody? Once they find out they've been manipulated, if they're good people, they're going to be pissed. I said, I wouldn't do that. I don't want to manipulate anybody.
David, you made the comment about, these people, their way of showing love, but the only person they really love is themselves. Right. And everybody else is subservient to that, and so, and they need that feeding. And so I saw this information. It comes out of Kabbalistic text that talks about, as we separate from source, higher self, divine power, that gives us life, that animates us. And they get further and further encased in their own beliefs, in their own ego, to where they can't get this animating force from anywhere. And so they have to start seeking it out from other people to sustain them, and so you hear these stories about, well, I was dating this guy and we broke up, and like a week later they're dating somebody else and they're married. It's because that person needs to have that source. They need to have that energy filled inside of them. Right. Which is sad and scary.
Well, it is. That is the main problem with a narcissist, is the fact that they can't just be a narcissist on their own and live a solo life. They have to have someone to make them feel inferior to make themselves feel better. They have to show that they're better. They have to have someone that they can push down, and that never works. It never ever works.
That's because they're bigger and better than all of us.
Right.
Dr. Rita, would you tell people that are living full lives, but they still want somebody in their lives? Would you say that to tell them love yourself first would be
very good?
Love yourself first, and when you love yourself, then you're fully capable of having a loving relationship.
So there's a woman named Lisa Romanoff who has a podcast that she talks about like codependent relationships and like she was brought up in an alcoholic family. So she talks about that a lot. And she said, the difference between somebody that gets into a toxic relationship versus someone that doesn't is that the person that doesn't might get into a toxic relationship, but they leave early on. The person that doesn't love themselves will stay, and they will put up with and tolerate what's going on until they say, wait, what about me? I have, and have self-worth and have self-value and have self-love. Because when you love yourself, you naturally will be, you just treated me like crap. So, and I'm going to love myself enough to walk out the door.
And I would also say that a narcissist probably, and this sounds almost antithetical, but does not love themselves. They're seeking gratification and love by making someone else feel inferior so that they can justify their superiority, but they really don't love themselves, I think. So
I would agree with that statement.
We'll probably get into that even more in future visits. But first of all, tell people where they can get this wonderful new book and about your website one more time.
Sure. So my website is soulhealer.com, and it's on the screen there. And they can get the book, Dang, It Was Me All Along, at any major booksellers that are going on. And can I put one more thing?
Sure.
I do a live stream on Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central, where people can check it out. They can join the stream, and I do free on-air readings. People can ask questions. It's Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central, and they can go to my YouTube channel, which is Just Energy Radio on YouTube, and just click on the live stream.
Excellent. Please go there, folks. She's really fantastic. And
text my phone. I'll go.
Okay.
All right.
Play with us.
Okay. And we will have you back on a regular basis. Thanks for rejoining us. We love you, and we appreciate everything that you do. Dr. Rita Louise here on the Awake Nation. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Dr. Rita
Lovely.
Louise. She's fantastic. Oh, I'm glad we got her back. Now, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, some news headlines, and then Dr. Lana Cantos will be in the wings, standing by. This whole day is kind of like Wellness Wednesday today when you think about it.
It is.
I think that's pretty cool. I love it. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Awake Nation on this Wednesday, right? The 3rd of April, 2024. David Zublick along with Penny L.A. Shepherd, and now we're going to have a few quick news headlines just ahead of our next guest, Dr. Lana Cantos. And this is interesting stuff right here. A rancher has blown the whistle on the mRNA vaccine testing in livestock. New filed a lawsuit after prisons order lockdowns during next week's solar eclipse. Joe Biden to supply Israel with $18 billion worth of taxpayer fighter jets. Justin Trudeau was caught trembling with fear as a furious crowd chanted "F-U, Trudeau." Indiana has declared a state of emergency ahead of the solar eclipse and the CERN launch, which is also taking place at the same time next week. Again, as we mentioned, Moderna unveils an mRNA vaccine for diseases linked to COVID jabs. And RFK Jr. says Biden is a bigger threat to democracy than Trump. And that is the latest headlines. And now let's bring in Dr. Lana Cantos. Her website is inspired by wellness.com. How are you, Doctor?
Hello. It's a maddening world.
Can we hear her?
It was a moment of silence. You didn't freeze, did you?
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. It sounded like you said something and you stopped.
You look beautiful as usual.
Oh, well, geez. I just got up and got a shower like everybody else, right?
We clean up quite well on this. All right. So today is, your topic day. I don't have any specific questions for you, but what do we want to talk about today?
Well, I made a promise. I'm a woman in my word. I made a promise to share with the viewers a little bit more about two of the top issues: the blood pressure, the cholesterol.
Yes, that's what it was.
So I told him it would take a little bit longer, and I said next week I can help them all around.
We'll have to do something on memory sometime because I forget that. We did talk about memory. All right, Alzheimer's.
Wait till the brain switch comes out, right?
Mhm.
So I really want you all, first of all, everyone knows that you have to be doing this alongside your doctor that wrote the prescription, because as much as many of us in this community want to just throw, caution to the wind and throw the prescriptions in the garbage, one of the medical doctors that trained me for years in diet and lifestyle medicine school, they literally would do that. New patients would come in and they would make them bring all of their prescription medications, and they were the medical doctor, and they just sat and honestly and tossed. It was like a ring toss or a basketball game, like,
Right.
Let's see if we can make that hit the garbage can. And the patients were like, doctor, oh my gosh. And they literally were throwing prescriptions in the garbage can, because there's certain prescriptions that they do so much more harm than good. Like, he didn't want them taking them. When you're talking about statins for cholesterol and hypertensive meds for blood pressure, truly they do more harm than good. That said, you can't just stop. You need to back them down, and with the help of your doctor. And if you don't have a medical doctor that will help you do that, find another one. And I'll tell you, I helped one patient. I'll tell you a true story. And you know what? Let me tell you, first of all, cholesterol medications, the statins, are supposed to prevent a cardiovascular event, a heart attack, a stroke, MI.
Right.
And now this is really criminal, in my opinion. They're not saying heart attacks anymore. They're calling it acute cardiac syndrome. So the patient doesn't really know they had a heart attack. This actually happened to my mother-in-law. And so the patient's thinking, okay, I'm leaving the hospital. I'm good.
Is that since the COVID reactions? Since people had heart problems after the COVID, now they're calling it acute cardiac reaction.
Acute cardiac syndrome. So what does that do? It's actually, like everything else, diabolical, but it's actually quite brilliant, because that patient leaves the hospital thinking, okay, like I'm good. I'm not going to really take some extra precautionary steps. I didn't have an MI. I didn't have a heart attack. I'm good. And that's literally what they think. And really, they did have a heart attack, and they should make some changes. But it just sends them on their way to the system hopefully wants them to have another heart attack, and then they're out. You know what I mean? So the cholesterol medications, let's start with that. Like I said, they are supposed to prevent a heart attack or stroke. And they work about 1.3% of the time, meaning less than 2% of the time, they're going to prevent a heart attack. They're going to prevent a stroke. So let's use round numbers and say 2% of the time they're going to work. So 98% of the time they are going to fail you. You're going to have a cardiovascular event regardless if you're taking statins. So what does that mean? It means you need to look at the risks versus the benefits. And with statins, there are so many more risks versus benefits. There are some medications where the benefits outweigh the risk. And my dad was a great example. He was on one cardiovascular medication that coordinated with his pacemaker and kept him alive for 11 more years, literally. So we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying, don't ever, you may never need a prescription med. But I will tell you, the statins, people get, they get crampy, and they get leg soreness, and they get muscle cramps, and my mother was an example where never complained, but almost wanted me to take her to the hospital one night because her pain in her legs were so terrible. And I said, okay, Mom, we are backing down these statins. It was like she was finally convinced. And as soon as we did that, no more leg pain, no more muscle cramps, no more aches, especially in the lower extremities, because it's a huge side effect of statins. So that's the cholesterol piece. And I will share with you that cholesterol, and this is what makes the cardiologists go apoplectic. It makes them go crazy. A normal total cholesterol should be around 150 total. Now, hear me out for a minute, because you all know my whole practice is based on gold standard peer review science. This is not my opinion. It's not Lana's take on something. It's not Dr. Lana's take on something. Dr. Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic did a 20-year plus peer-reviewed study, proving that diet will back down, stop, prevent, reverse terminal cardiovascular disease. So all of that said, when you're talking about cholesterol in his study, anyone that had 150 total cholesterol or lower, none of them had a heart attack. None of them had a stroke. None of them had a cardiovascular event. In fact, the only individuals that died in the study, and I know because he trained me, I was trained, when I say I was trained by the masters, I mean that, all glory to God, because I really was trained by the masters. They're in their late 80s and late 90s by now, all doing well, all healthy. But he published that study, and the only people that passed away were people that came in with like end stage cancer. They didn't die from, a heart attack. They didn't die from a stroke. They did not have a cardiovascular event. So we know that total cholesterol of around 150 is the target. No one ever has had a cardiovascular event with that number and lower. Your body makes cholesterol. You don't need to keep eating it and eating it. It makes it. So that's the cholesterol piece. The blood pressure piece, and this is interesting, and I don't have the data. I probably could look it up at the study. Over in the UK years ago, they had a shortage of hypertensive medications, of blood pressure meds. And everybody started to get better because so many people are over medicated with blood pressure medication. They don't need it.
God.
And they had so many side effects from blood pressure med. I mean, I had somebody that was told they may have prostate cancer because of side effects of blood pressure meds. People, again, they get a racing heart. They get nervous. They get pain in their legs. They get they have issues with prostate, all kinds of issues that are side effects from blood pressure medications. And so you have to remember too. So again, you work with your doctor to back them down. And remember, if you want to work with me, I'll teach you how to heal your blood vessels so you don't need cholesterol meds or blood pressure meds. That said, there's about 2 to 3% that have family history. It's really rare, but that you do need maybe a low dose blood pressure med. And absolutely, we can, talk about that. You maybe need that. It's very, very rare. The majority, we don't need cholesterol meds. We don't need blood pressure meds, but you need to back them down with your doctor. So talking about blood pressure, you have to remember too, that they set the normal range. And if the normal range, if they can cast a wider net of all of you and say, oh, you have high blood pressure, come on into our pharmaceutical world and get on these medications or you're going to die, you're going to stroke out. They change the normal ranges. So normal used to be 140 over 85, and that in the UK, everybody had like 140 over 85, 140 over 90. They were fine. I'm not saying that if your blood pressure is 185 over 150 that you don't need to go to the ER. Absolutely. Right. Go, or you will not live. I mean, go. You need medical intervention. Thank God you live in the United States. You don't want to be in any other country. If your blood pressure is elevating and you are feeling anxious, you can feel it. I've had patients for years. I'm like, no, you can feel it. Get to the ER. Absolutely. Without a doubt. But people typically lived, 140 over 90. Their whole life they were fine. But what did the big pharma do? Big pharma shortened that up. 120 over 80. You ask anyone, I don't care if they're in the medical field or not, what's normal blood pressure? I mean, probably a high school student could, 120 over 80. A college student could, 120 over 80. Isn't that normal?
Right.
And so if you're not in that 120 over 80, they have people thinking 125 over 85. Oh my goodness. I need medicated.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole idea. That's what they do. It's fear mongering, and they, contract the normal ranges, and they do the same thing, with all kind of other biomarkers.
It's almost like when you get to be a certain age and you go to the doctor for that one checkup, all of a sudden they say, well, we got to start putting you on blood pressure meds and statin drugs, for your cholesterol. Even if you don't necessarily, because you said the goalposts have changed.
Right.
If you're over 120, over 80, well, we have to put you on a high blood pressure med. If your cholesterol is over 150, and they don't even talk about ways to get it down without that, right? They just say you have to start being on this drug. And it's very difficult to get off to argue about it.
We got a comment. House Full of Cats said statins will give you Alzheimer's. Thoughts on that?
Oh, this is what happens because, no, that's a pointed comment because there's so many side effects. And what happens is you're manipulating your whole cardiovascular system. And remember, everybody, your blood vessels run from your head to your toes. And that's what I even tell, honestly, I've had so many men in my practice, and it's usually the second or third consult. Then they trust me and they're like, okay, she really does know what she's talking about. Then they'll tell me they have erectile dysfunction, even though I knew that by reading their chart. And I just wait for them to tell me. And they're like, okay, doc, can you help me? I'm like, absolutely, I can. It's really reversible in 98% of the cases, and it's vascular. Just think about your blood vessels run everywhere, head to your toes, head to the penis, head to the fingertips, head to your knees, head to your ankles. I mean, if you keep the blood vessels open, you can, protect your brain health. You can protect reproductive health. You can protect the movement in your hands and your feet and your joints. You're getting oxygenated blood there. So statins, Alzheimer's, dementia, brain, anytime. Here's the other thing. And I think this is what this wise viewer was pointing at is, remember, everyone, the pharmaceutical industry. And again, there's drugs that'll save your life. I say that all the time, but the majority of them are trying to put us in an early grave. So what they do is they will attach a toxic chemical, together to get over the blood-brain barrier. So now those drugs are bringing toxins into your brain. The statin drugs are bringing toxins into your brain. They're crossing the blood-brain barrier. Other medications, polysorbate 80 brings chemical inflammatories over your blood-brain barrier. Your blood-brain barrier is supposed to be the gateway and protect all of those terrible things from getting into your brain. So that's another highway where they're trying, to damage us. And it's really criminal, the dementia, Alzheimer's. And it brings me to, this is interesting. I say this all the time every week, and I really mean it. Like, we couldn't plan this. Things just on this show, it's the perfect highway for the three of us. But Harvard medical doctors, I was a keynote speaker a few weeks ago at a health and wellness conference. And the reason I'm sharing that is, the doctor that spoke before me, really brilliant doctor, actually world-renowned glutathione expert, stem cell, all of that, really brilliant man. They had just spoken to a group of Harvard medical doctors. And I don't know if you all know this, but Harvard medical doctors just coined the four horsemen. And so the four horsemen, it's biblical in Revelations, like end of times, all the bad things, right? Well, for people that believe, and I'm not here to, I personally believe in God and Jesus, and that's my belief. But this is I'm just making a statement in general for everyone. The end of times in Revelations, if you believe in the Bible, is what the Harvard medical doctors equate, the four horsemen in Revelations, the four horsemen in your health. And the four horsemen are Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. And you are hard pressed to find someone when they die in the United States that they didn't have one of those four horsemen that killed them. Right. And so I'm actually taking it further and talking about the dirty dozen. And I went back and all the thousands of charts that I have. every person that came into my practice is still coming into my practice to this day. And I mean, I've been so blessed with my training. It's word of mouth. And then people from the United States tell somebody and they tell somebody. So I've had patients from Canada, Romania, Spain, Italy, England, UK, the UAE. And the reason I'm sharing that is they have all had one of what I call the dirty dozen. I could talk about, you know, that now and moving down. We could talk about all 12 of those diseases, but they all stem. The 4 horsemen are in there: heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, and diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And they're all reversible, except certain cancers are a tougher thing to do. But cancer is nothing but a profound failure of your immune system. You balance your pH again all over in your body, and the body can fight. You know, it's you get your immune system built back up. But you're right, Dave. We hit a certain age, medication, it's just the norm. It's like cattle going to slaughter. And we have a voice. You can say, you know what, doctor, where's the studies? The gold standard studies, not studies paid by the pharmaceutical company that makes this drug that you're trying to get me to take. But where are the independent studies that show me that there's more benefit than risk to this particular prescription? That's probably one of the most important things I've ever said on this show. And this fall, it'll be 3 years. Honestly.
Yeah.
You're your boss. There's no doctor that's your boss. You're the boss of your health. So anyway, I hope that helps you all.
It did. Now, you kind of alluded to something earlier. Maybe you know something that we don't and can tease it a little bit. Is Numi coming out with a brain swish?
Well, and I want everybody to know I did not break an NDA. I would never, ever, ever do that. There was a public announcement, and hold on everybody, because it is not tomorrow. It's not next month or the month after that. So relax, but I'll talk about this a little bit because we are talking about the brain, and that wonderful viewer said, you know, statins, Alzheimer's and all of that and brain issues. And I have a passion for brain health. My brother died of brain cancer. My father died of dementia. I love to help football players and athletes protect from traumatic brain injury and concussions. So I have a passion for brain health. And what is going on is last October, when they released HERS, the female swish that is helping women's menstrual cycles all over America, ladies. Holy cow. If you have cramps or you have bad premenstrual syndrome, wow, you want to do the glutathione and the HERS. I could talk about that in a minute. But at that time, when they announced HERS, the female swish, and they nanosized the botanicals, wrapped it in water, same amazing delivery system. That's what sets Numi apart. They did announce brain. It's not released, because if you know the owner of Numi or know about him, and we are going to get him on this program one time. He's actually now flying to Scottsdale to do an event, but he has a passion too for the brain, 75 years old. So they do so many third-party tests at Numi. They will not release a product until the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and it's safe, and it's working at optimal levels. So yes, in October of 2023, we were told that Brain Swish is made, and it is in massive third-party testing. The results they are having are jaw droppers again. And we do not know when all of those tests are going to be done. But I would say, and I'm saying I'm not breaking NDA, I would say that it will absolutely be in 2024. And I promise, you all know me. I like David.
Well, you'll be the first one to tell us about it.
I promise when I know when we have an exact
I'll be the
date,
first one to take it.
well,
I'm bringing you there right now.
Right. Here's the thing. It is with the glutathione. I want everyone to just hear this, please. All right, everybody, deep breath. All of these other swishes products, it's a delivery system. It's nanosized, wrapped in hydrostat, wrapped in water, more pure than hospital IV. It gets in your cells in seconds. That's the magic. Right. It's not, it is so bioavailable. It's almost immediate. You may or may not feel something right away, but what I want to share is glutathione is the foundation. Your house will fall unless you build the brick basement with bricks and mortar, or if you live in Florida, that cement slab, your house will sink in the swamp. Glutathione is, I am the queen of analogies, but glutathione is that cement slab. Glutathione is that cement block 13 course basement, you know, if you don't live in the South. Without the cement glutathione basement, your house, your beautiful temple that I believe God made, will fall. So you always take 2 capfuls, swish about 4 minutes, do that morning and night, of glutathione. And then these other swish products that they are researching as they are released, and they're released very, very carefully. Let me tell you, I've never seen a company operate with this integrity and this precision and the research behind it. So it is in addition to the glutathione. Like, ladies, if you're taking hers, you take your swish with your glutathione. A minute or two later, swish with your hers female swish. Right. And you'll do the same thing when brain comes out. You swish your glutathione and then swish with the brain. I have spoken to someone that's been on the brain for quite some time. And I spoke with them on Zoom actually about 10 days ago. And I spoke with them a few months ago about the brain. And they just said, boom, it's like a light switch. It's like a light switch. And
I'm waiting for that one. I tell you, I wish it could have been part of that study, you know. But I'm waiting. I'm ready to go because all the other products, the Swish, the Hers for women, the spray, the skin spray, I mean, awesome stuff. Every one of these things. If you haven't tried them, folks, oh my God, they're just fantastic.
I'll give you a quick tip on the skin spray if you want, because I am friends with, she's an amazing world-renowned esthetician, nurse practitioner, author, speaker, Juliana Dennis. She's actually speaking this Saturday on an app on your phone with Numi. If you want to hear, go to theawakenation.numi.com and get your swish, and then email me or go to inspiredbywellness.com and go in the contact section and say, hey, I got my swish from the Awake Nation, Dr. Lana. I'll send you the invitation to hear Juliana Dennis. She's amazing, lovely lady. I was with her a couple of weeks ago, and we are just lovely colleagues and friends. She is a brilliant esthetician. That's glutathione swish and glutathione skin spray are used in every procedure. I'm telling you, ladies, if you get Botox, you spray over the injection points. If you get chemical peel, if you have micro needling done, the esthetician sprays all during your treatment, and you go home as part of the package with the glutathione swish and with the glutathione skin spray. If you have microdermabrasion done, you wait because the skin needs to be dry. You go home and use your glutathione skin spray. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it reduces the redness and inflammation from all of your facial treatments. And ladies, you could put makeup on so much sooner and be out ready to go. And nobody wants that redness and inflammation. They want the treatment because they want to look younger, but they don't want the inflammation and redness. Yeah. The glutathione swish, you have to do it internally, and the skin spray externally. And it's incredible for any of you getting any treatment.
Before you get Botox, try the spray first anyway. You'll find improvement in your skin anyway. You might decide you don't need that.
Amen. And I don't use Botox, but I'm like, I'm no judge. I don't use. But if you're an esthetician, go to theawakenation.numi.com or go and tell me you saw me on wonderful David and Penny's show. And I will help you. I will literally, I do this around my patients. I'll get on the phone with you. If you're a licensed esthetician in the United States and you want to learn more, and maybe you want to offer this in your spa or your salon, I'm telling you, reach out and I'll help you do that with David and Penny. It's amazing. You will not
be disappointed. It's fantastic. All right. Real quickly, anything exciting you want to tell our viewers at inspiredbywellness.com that's going on?
I'm just doing one better for all of you. I'm going to slowly release the dirty dozen. And these are the mistakes that even smart people make around type 2 diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's, heart disease. And I don't have cancer, but I have weight loss. And then I'm going to release the dirty dozen. It's really affordable. And these are the mistakes that everyone's making. And these diseases start to progress in your body. And you can correct these mistakes and start to feel better. So they are at inspiredbywellness.com. And I'm going to slowly release all 12 of them. I've got 4 of them out there now that coincide with the 4 horsemen. Because there's no reason you should be ending your life with the 4 horsemen or any of those 12 diseases. So I want to help you avoid that.
Keep those horsemen at bay. All right, Dr. Lana, thank you for being with us. We look for, oh, by the way, any quick advice for anyone during the eclipse that we need to be concerned about?
Oh God, yeah, don't look. I mean, go out with glasses, absolutely. And you know what? If you want to be awake and really sharp mentally, switch with your glutathione before you go out there. But yeah, please use the glasses.
They have special glasses for viewing, which you can order for viewing eclipses. Get those. Do not look by yourself.
Yeah, and please, those parents and grandparents and guardians, please, the young children, they get excited, and if they're out there, just make sure that their glasses are like taped on their head or something. Or if they're too young, put them in bed and you go out and watch it.
That's right. All right. Thanks, Dr. Lana. We appreciate you very much. We'll talk to you again next week.
Bye.
Dr. Lana Cantos here on the Awake Nation. And yeah, the eclipse is coming, but we're not going to worry about it here because I'm going to be on the air probably at the time that thing goes off, and hopefully we won't go down.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
What's going to happen with the frequency? Because Amy Holland can tell us that.
Amy Holland is with us, and wow. Hey, did you have that article, Penny, from real quick before we get to Amy's topic, about the Havana syndrome and the car chases?
Actually, I think what I have is the video. So let me just go backward.
Do you hear about this, Amy?
No. This would be the first time I'm hearing about it.
Let me see if I can get it.
Are you talking about the car chase in California that they shot the innocent person?
No, there was some sort of a car chase. Why did you let her get to her topic?
Okay, so this is Brett Beyer, Fox News. I'll just play a little bit of it, Amy, because it's long. It's like 8 minutes long. So hold on, I'll just play a little bit.
We have a new analysis tonight on what may have caused the condition infamously known as Havana syndrome. Neither experts nor victims are satisfied so far with federal investigations into the situation. My colleague Brett Baer explains how the public evidence contradicts the government's response.
Thanks, Jillian. In 2016, the first cases of what became known as Havana syndrome were reported. U.S. diplomats and foreign officials stationed around the globe complained of symptoms, including headaches, vertigo, and brain fog. In some cases, the illnesses were long-lasting and considered traumatic brain injuries. Many health officials and scientists believe radio frequency energy likely caused those symptoms. But what or who created the microwave energy is still up for debate, or at least it was. U.S. intelligence agencies assessed it's unlikely, in their words, that a foreign government was behind the attacks. But victims, and now experts in the field, say definitively otherwise.
Usually what would wake me up is I'd be in a pool of my own blood. On my pillow from, gushing nosebleeds.
Adam is one of hundreds of Americans who say they've suffered from Havana syndrome. He's essentially patient zero, the first known U.S. diplomat to experience the mysterious illness. His symptoms began in 2016 while working at the U.S. Embassy in Cuba.
There was a significant amount of head pressure, a lot of ear pain, eventually stabbing ear pain, to the point that I started blacking out.
So what caused these strange illnesses?
The majority of the people I know who I've talked to about this, who do know the field, agree it certainly fits with a microwave beam as the attacking element.
Meet physicist James Benford.
I'm an expert in high-power microwaves, both the devices and the effects of such radiation.
Have you looked specifically at the Havana syndrome situation?
Extensively, and I'm very familiar with the national capabilities of our country and foreign countries.
Last month, U.S. intelligence agencies released an assessment on Havana syndrome, concluding, quote, "It is very unlikely a foreign adversary is responsible." The report adds, quote, "Intelligence community agencies assess that symptoms reported by U.S. personnel were probably the result of factors that did not involve a foreign adversary, such as pre-existing conditions, conventional illnesses, and environmental factors."
The report was kind of a travesty. I wasn't interviewed for the ICA report. If it was that comprehensive, you think you'd want to go back to patient zero and ask questions.
They feel like they were on the back end of some kind of attack. Do they have reason to be justified with that feeling?
Oh, yes. First of all, it's clear they were attacked. And secondly, the explanations for the government seem to be planned to obscure the real origins and deny any foreign capability. That is simply not the case.
Let's talk about the foreign capability and what's out there and what we know of, the possibilities of what this could be.
High power microwaves came into existence about 50 years ago, have been thoroughly developed first by the US and the Soviet Union, and these days by the US, the Russians, and the Chinese. The Russians and the Chinese exchange a lot of technology and information, and they have been developed to the point where they can put it in very compact forms, where they're transportable in vans and trucks and aircraft. So they're completely deployable.
Why do you think, knowing what you know, would this report come out and say that there is no credible evidence that a foreign actor is behind the Havana syndrome, or it's, quote, very unlikely?
That's laughable. The Russians in particular have specialized in compact systems. They have published in the open literature reports of the effects of microwaves on laboratory animals such as mice. And they have shown that these effects are parallel to those that we see in the Havana syndrome. What they did is irradiate mice under repetitive, very short pulses. And then they find effects on mice that they are measurable and permanent. I think there's a really good case that the Russian capability could be used by them, but it could be used by anybody else who reads this open literature as well.
Everything.
I'm going to stop it right there.
Yeah.
So, Amy, this came from, and you know it's laughable too. This actually came, it was a promotional clip of a story from CBS News 60 Minutes. I believe it aired last Sunday, but it was showing body cam footage of police chasing a car down a highway in Key West in 2020. The chase went on for 15 miles, a driver topping speeds of 110 miles per hour. Eventually, he was pulled over and apprehended. Inside his car, the officers found bank account notes and a device resembling a walkie-talkie that can erase a car's computer data, including its GPS history. Officers found a Russian passport, so they're going to try to, blame this on Russia, which is not a Russian thing. Gives his name as Vitaly, which is Italian, and says he's from St. Petersburg. Well, there's also a St. Petersburg, Florida. When asked why he fled from police, he repeatedly says, I don't know. And then the report comes weeks after the release of a nearly 5-year study from the National Institute of Health, which found no explanation for the mysterious health problems, including headaches, balance problems, difficulties thinking and sleep, and that have been reported by the U.S. diplomats and other government employees. The NIH conducted an array of advanced tests, but found no brain injuries or degeneration. What say you on this BS report?
Well, one, there's actually a couple of reports because they actually believe that 60 Minutes just came out with an episode too as well, and also had the diplomats on there too. And we're talking about and blaming it on Russia as well.
Right.
I know for a fact that I have never, ever caught anybody inside of Russia committing these crimes against these people. I've helped over 5,000 victims globally. My last client that I helped was out in Hungary, and I did capture Russian communications, but it was the United Kingdom or the UK that was hacking into Russia and going after the Russian troops. So Russia didn't know about those communications at all and how they were trying to access into their network into the security cyber warfare crimes. So the only thing I've really caught on at Russia is a Russian application that is used, but applications can be created by anybody. It's not the Russian government. It's probably a Russian person who lives in a different country that created that application that they're using. A lot of it, because of the European side, the way that the networks configure is the US connects to the European countries, NATO. They connect to the United Kingdom, the British Royal Military. And from the British Royal Military, they connect to all the other different countries within inside of Europe and Asia because they could connect to that side of the world. So they work connecting with each other and in those operation systems. Havana syndrome is the only ones that I've really captured are the UK connecting into China secretly, once again, and connecting into Russia secretly. So I've never caught China behind these communications or the Havana syndrome. All countries have these weapon system capabilities. I mean, look, if you go to military.com, type in laser research, you will have a bunch of different articles, new releases on laser technology. That is a microwave weapon. That is a directed energy weapon. Lasers are part of the electromagnetic scale. So laser technology, microwave technology. Also, they said that inside that report that they said it was the earliest as 1950. I'm sorry to tell you folks, but they've been studying 5G technologies and microwaves since the 1800s.
Right.
Artificial intelligence, neural link technology was developed in 1820. And that's inside our history books. So the information that they give out is complete false. It's a narrative that they want to push once again to put that fear agenda into people's minds, saying that we're being attacked. We need these high-tech surveillance systems. We need to implement them. We need to target the US citizens. And they're trying to pass laws to get all of this technology passed in for their New World Order agenda. And I know you don't want to hear that because of this kind of conspiracy theory, but it's the truth. I mean, Biden.
We do on this show.
Are they saying that it's not here's the oxymoron? Are they saying it's not foreign because it's actually us because we're the perpetrators?
Right. The US is mainly behind the systems. A lot of the criminals behind that belong to Obama's civilian army. And that civilian army is actually larger than our United States Corps combined together. And they're
Good
filled.
Lord.
Yeah. So if you add the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, individually, National Guard, Obama's civilian army alone is larger than all of those people combined.
That's crazy.
And they're filled with cybersecurity experts. They're filled with programmers. They're filled with engineers, people who are into programming and coding. They have lawyers. They have doctors. They have officers, regular police officers that are involved in this and working together inside of that for their personal agendas. So a lot of the times when I do my audio analysis for the victims, I hear information about a depopulation or what the theorem. There's this Gregorian theorem.
Mm-hmm. You actually hear chatter like separate like words and things that alert you of maybe pedophile organizations, and but for the U.S. And this is something I don't want to belabor it, but I do. For the U.S. government to come out and say that they found no evidence of any brain injuries, and when we actually, the Biden administration, to my knowledge, sanctioned an individual who's in Miami, who's a doctor, to treat these patients. So
Right.
either it does exist or it doesn't. Now they're saying that they found, because we know statistics can be skewed, which screws us. But but how is this possible that they're letting the public know, and we know that's what their thing is, but they're telling them that it doesn't exist when we have facts that prove that it does. Can you explain that to our audience?
A lot of the victims have come forward with the Havana syndrome. Even civilians, not just the Chinese and diplomats, but they're only focusing on those group of people because those are the ones that are getting the funding and the grants. So when they assign doctors like Dr. Giordano or Dr. Hoffer in Miami, they have to provide the evidence in order to keep their research and funding to get their grants so they could continue to prove the medical side that these are existing. Now, a lot of the doctors, I believe there's four. Or four. I held up three fingers.
Maybe you're being targeted.
There's actually four. I believe there's a school in Northwestern Illinois is doing studies on this. There's a Pennsylvania school that is doing this. Giordano is doing this, and Dr. Hoffer from Miami are doing these studies as well. A lot of these, they're not giving the diagnoses to Havana syndrome to the victims anymore. They're falsifying that information, and they're saying you're either hit with directed energy weapons or you have some vestibular imbalance system inside of the ear canal. There is physical damage and proof because I've examined a lot of the victims on the civilian side. Now, I've never studied the diplomat side. I'm not authorized. I don't have the clearance to talk to them or anything along those lines. But the people that I help, the victims, are, when I examine them doing my thermal tomography sides of the examinations, I find the damage in their ears. I could identify the different nerves that are affecting their body. I could prove the voice to skull technology and how it's resonating through their ear canal or connecting to their eye frames for remote neural monitoring or for optical imagery, putting pictures into people's brains and the neural connections with that thermal tomography. And I see the physical damage that it is done to these victims, whether it's tissue damage, whether it's nerve damage, whether it's cellular, whether it's internal as well. I do magnetic resonance analyzer tests, and that studies the insides of the people. And a lot of times it'll pick up nodes, it'll pick up tumors or lymphs, or it could pick up vaginal scarring for the sexual assaults and the rapes on the victims to prove that those actions are actually being committed on them. So when the doctors do these examinations, none of them are consistent. None of them are doing the same tests. So of course, they're not going to get the same results. Every single one of these colleges or these researchers are doing independent studies and practices. And what they're trying to do, the US government is trying to do, is say that Havana syndrome does not exist. It's not real. That way, anybody who's already got the Havana syndrome diagnosis on the regular civilian side, they won't be able to use that because they deemed it not real. So you won't be able to use that diagnosis. You've been given a false diagnosis by a doctor.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So a lot of that has to deal with interference because a lot of citizens are coming forward and they're not taking it. Now, the FBI inside the government saying, please come to us, please make a complaint, please do this. Let me tell you, I probably know over 10,000 people who have gone to the FBI and complained about these microwave weapon systems. They have not done one thing about them.
Do you think, Amy, if you go to the FBI, that's going to be in furtherance of your targeting? Because I had a girl come to me who had soaped her entire car and said that the Austin FBI were targeting her and following her everywhere.
And no, it is true. A lot of the FBI are part of the surveillance program. That originally started back in 1964 with their behavioral science division. So that the CIA gave the MK Ultra to the FBI, and then they started doing the surveillance operations and so forth through that. Now, in regard to the FBI, a lot of them are involved, but there are some officers out there that are actually trying to help. And problem is, a lot of the victims, when they go, they have no concrete proof. They have no concrete evidence. And that's what I do, is I provide the evidence for the victims, whether it's a physical report or showing the damages on their body with my thermal tomography. On the audio side, I write the report of the communications that are captured of your criminals. So you have actual names. You have equipment that is being used. I could identify the weapon systems, the drones, the satellites, whether they're connecting to a smart meter or whether they're hacking into your cell phone, different types of hacking techniques that they're gaining access to. For instance, like one of my clients that I just did, they were talking about lagging issues on their computer system. Oh. And it was right. Well, a lot of hacking and lagging does occur from the hackers, power drainage and so forth. But the video was very weird. The person was singing and they were singing along with a song, and the song would speed up and slow down. Now, forensically, a lot of people say, oh, that's a hacker messing with the audio components inside of there, switching up the speed. But really, I determined it was a multiprocessor issue. So the person was playing a YouTube video at the same time of using their computer for recording themselves. And because of the two processes, the sound components from the YouTube playing at the same time and the noise threshold points from the recorder trying to record a podcast or a video, it messed up because they weren't synchronizing properly. It was a synchronization process. But forensically, I had to analyze that and look at the meta tag data. I had to look at the timing processes inside of the computer system or within that media tag information, find out what type of power supply. Is it a 1040 or were they doing a 1024? I had to look at the different length. What was it being recorded at? YouTube has a different style. Well, MP4, if that file is an MP4, it causes synchronization aspects if you're using an outside source. So looking at all that information, I was able to forensically determine the proper reason, but they were hacking into his computer system too, I have to say. They were accessing the CPU and they were synchronizing into the system, which also caused delays.
Yeah.
So there is proof and evidence, but forensically, I had to show the mechanical components, and people don't realize that. And then I had to prove the hacking side of connecting into their device, their physical devices. Actually, no, they were connecting to the physical devices, not the physical. So your physical devices are anything like a mouse, anything that is separate or can be adapted into your computer system. Why the physical components, those are your RAM, your CPU, your memory banks in there. So when they hack into the system, a lot of them, especially with Windows operating systems, they get straight connections from the FBI to the computer. So they would go to Microsoft.
Okay.
And Microsoft would give them access to your account and through the Windows installations. And so they could gain access directly into the operating system and backdoor access. They don't have
kind of like when you need to get your, and I thank you for putting off your presentation today. We'll do that next week. But kind of like when somebody says they want to fix your computer, like Best Buy, and they remotely access your computer, kind of like that, but more covert backdoor kind of stuff.
Well, remotely accessing it usually is through some form of Bluetooth connection or through an application system that is installed into your computer system, or you giving authorization into that. You can disable those settings inside of your computer system if you just type in simple one. Just go into your search bar at the bottom corner, bottom left-hand corner and type remote desktop. You could disable that easily and make sure that nobody outside sources. You could go into your BIOS and disable your virtual network as well in there, and disable the remote access too. Kind of depending on how old your computer is, or every computer is different, whether it's a Mac, whether it's a Windows, Dell, HP, Asus. So you can configure that, but directly into the operating system is different through the applications. They could gain access by stealing your cookies even. And they could use your cookies and pretend to be
the girls.
Which one?
The Girl Scouts want to steal your cookies too, even though they're selling them to you.
That went over my head. Like, I did not capture that.
Well, we're just running out of time. Go ahead, finish up.
But so they could pretend to be you. And so law enforcement has direct access through the companies, and that's where they're getting the third-party contractors. And
when you say the company, are you talking about the CIA?
Well, CIA, DOD, Department of DOH, FBI, all of those agencies have those capabilities, but technically they're supposed to get a warrant, but they're not. And they're using these FISA abuses and the Espionage Act and the Patriot Act all against you, saying this person to talk to so-and-so.
Hey, the warrant went the way of informed consent.
Yes. Now have none of that. There's a new article that we read. I'll send it to you, Amy, which says there is now no longer informed consent. Amy Holm, I love you. You're an amazing individual.
Amy'sAudio.com. If you want to get in touch with her, she's wonderful. And it's Amy's AIMEE' audio.com, correct?
Yes.
And Amy's Audio at protonmail.com is across the bottom of the screen there under her name. Please reach out to her if you need help. She's wonderful. She's fantastic. And next time you're on, we'll do the presentation you have. But I just wanted to get your take on this today because it was something else. So,
well, it was great to talk about that. We'll do it next week.
sounds great. Thank you so much, Amy.
Bye.
Have a great day. Amy Holm here on the Awake Nation of Amy's Audio, and she's fantastic. Well,
She is.
What a day.
I know.
It's actually been a very Wellness Wednesday filled day. And I hope that you are going to go out and have a great rest of the day. Before you do, the other day, we told you that, in addition to all of his presidential duties, Biden has been making the rounds of some of the most popular game shows in the country, the TV game shows. And the last one he was on, he didn't do too well on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but he's still trying to do something for the Alzheimer's Association.
Oh,
so
Lord.
I guess he went on, I guess a group of these deep state liberals went on Family Feud hosted by Donald Trump.
Top 4 answers on the board. Name the first thing you would do if you woke up in jail.
I take responsibility for everything I didn't do.
She should be in jail.
Call my lawyer. Shifty shift. If he weren't in the halls of Congress, he'd be in jail.
Well, when we have the discussion about who's responsible,
Cry. You know who's further left than crazy Bernie? Kamala.
I would regret what I did.
Just take AOC plus 3.
Ask what happened.
Hunter, you're a loser.
Name the first thing you'd do if you woke up in jail.
What am I doing here?
Let's not kid ourselves. Joe is shot.
Name the first thing you would do if you woke up in jail.
Brian Chuck, Crazy Nancy.
That's great.
It's fantastic. And we'll see if he's on any other game shows. I think he's on The Price is Right. I think we'll have that for you in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
So that is going to do it for this edition of the Awake Nation. We appreciate you being here. We do it Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern, 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific. And we will be back, of course, tomorrow on Thursday. Among our guests, of course, will be the great Dr. James Fetzer. And who else is coming on? Do we have a little?
I'd have to actually look. You're going to make me look?
Okay. No, I'm not going to make you look right now. We got stuff we have to do because, it's been a long day. So we're out of time. So, we're out of here. We're going to go look things up. Zublick out.
Shepherd out.
Goodbye for now from David Zublick's Awake Nation and from your co-host David Zublick and Penny L.A. Shepherd. We invite you to watch us live on Rumble at the David Zublick channel and at theawakenation.com. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern. Join us for the Awake Nation News, a 30-minute quick shot of truth with a shot of espresso, 8 a.m. to 8:30 Central, 9 a.m. to 9:30 Eastern, followed by 5 sets of 30-minute interviews with influencers who defy the mainstream narrative. David Zublick's Awake Nation, the truth with a shot of espresso. Please join us on YouTube at The Awake Nation News for an additional 30 minutes of breaking news, posting Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Central and 6 p.m. Eastern. On behalf of David Zublick's Awake Nation and co-hosts David Zublick and Penny L.A. Shepherd, we humbly thank our Dark Outpost and Awake Nation family. We thank you for watching David Zublick's Awake Nation and ask you to join us again each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern. Shoop doo 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 doo, yeah. Shoop doo 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 doo. Shoop doo 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 doo, yeah.